Hey, what's up? I got to have actually. Give me a second. I was listening to Oppenheimer. I was making this way more intense than it should be. I got to have a really good conversation with a researcher I admire. Um, so he's an undergrad researcher. I met him through the coffee chat I had a couple weeks ago with another researcher who just defended his PhD and is now a doctor. He's going to some school in New York, I believe. But the student I just had a coffee chat with, he's an undergraduate researcher and he's entering his senior year, applying to PhD soon. Really great dude, has so many stuff he's done, so many accomplishments, all that. And he basically gave me the rundown, and I think it was really insightful. So I'm just gonna talk about that. I'm not gonna talk about everything. Let's consider this like under NDA. That's not true. I just can't remember everything right now. But I think some cool points that he brought up was fail fast. I think that's something I've talked about a lot, but I think it's something that's actually hard to put into practice. Failing fast is easier to say than do because when you say fail fast, you mean for those projects that are your ambitions. Like there's projects like Dig, right? Dig is the deep information generation thing where you basically use a model and use like a low rank adaptation to fine tune on a legal document or a contract of sorts. That's something I was really passionate about. Like, oh, this is a novel idea. Pitched it to him, explained it. He's like, nah, that's not gonna work. And explained A, B, C, why it wouldn't work. And it's not one of those things where it's like, oh, get offended and all that. It's more so these ideas, you don't just want them to work for working's sake. You want them to actually solve a problem. And ultimately, if it can't solve the problem, then why does it exist? I think if you don't build cool things just like for the sake of building cool things, that's fine, right? But if you're ultimately trying to solve a solution, then you have to approach it from that angle of does it work or does it not work. I think being able to have people in your life or your circle that can help you assess those things from an angle that's not you is very important. Something I have to do more. That's why I'm happy I had this conversation and intend to have more conversations with him and other people in a similar manner. I think I'm a very extroverted person, but I'm also someone who's very private when it's stuff that actually matters to me. So, for example, if it's Project Phillips, for example, I don't talk about Project Phillips or how it can improve to anyone because I'm very sensitive about that. Not to the point where I start crying, but the point where it's like, if someone says you can improve in X, Y, Z way, then I'm like, oh dang, now I feel hurt. Even though it's very true, like there's many improvements I can make to Project Phillips. I'm very lazy with this project if you actually think about it. And I'm also a very busy person from time to time. So maybe not going to get into a whole conversation with that, but that's the idea, right? But with research, and I think with all of the stuff I want to be doing going forward, I just can't have that mentality of being sensitive to stuff like that. So yeah, that was one major thing. I think another thing was just about like how to get into research, the people you can contact, like postdocs, is really the main people we're on contact first because they're the people, like they're the managers of sorts who are actually here. A lot of them are on sabbatical. A lot of the other people are on sabbatical. So like PhD students are probably not the best ones to contact, but postdocs are. So I also got a name that I should contact. So I'm going to try and follow up with that person. Obviously, same stuff with the college staff from before doing workshops at conferences. This is a really good one. There's, I think, a conference coming up soon or relatively soon. I think next year, 2026, March. It's a CCVR conference. It's like a vision conference, and he recommended I do one of the workshops there and find like a niche to apply because I think that's like the best way, like the best, I don't know, like the best avenue to go through at it. Because if you go through like a very I think the idea is if you go to like a very broad problem, it's going to be a lot of solutions. But if you can find a niche that you care for deeply and you have a sort of expertise or are willing to develop an expertise, and that's probably your best bet. I think that's something I have to do. With vision, I've always avoided computer vision like it's the plague for some reason. I don't know why. I barely have experience when it comes to AI stuff, but for some reason, I just always want to avoid computer vision. And I think that's something I have to just face my fears with right now. But I actually don't know why I want to do computer vision. The immediate things I can think of is maybe like scenes, analyzing scenes, or scene understanding, or maybe like stuff. Anytime I think like domains, I always think about Africa for some reason or Nigeria specifically, but I can't think of something that would particularly be useful to a problem I'm interested in. I could obviously try and generate ideas for generating idea six, but that's not how I like to go about that. In terms of other stuff though, I think he gave me a lot of advice, research. I also got to hear his own music that he listens to as he's doing research. It was actually a lot of rap and 90s, which I thought was really interesting. I was like, oh wow, that's, I try to put like, it depends on what I'm doing. If it's like a very deep thinking session, I usually have like a science music playlist I listen to, or maybe like some Oppenheimer. If it's like a marathon or something I'm working on like that, or a sprint, maybe Hamilton is the my music of choice. So it's really interesting to get that different. Just to hear that from his perspective. But yeah, I think the major thing, major thing with this conversation, I think a lot more recently now, as I push more relentlessly towards the soul research thing, is the scale of scale. Scale's the biggest thing. When it comes to research and like AI research, with my levels of skills, it feels like you're this tiny drop in these planet of water, right? It's not even like an ocean, like a planet of water, like a body of water that's comparable to a planet. I said that in many different ways, but it's a very hard pill to digest, because I think the fear of mine, right, is that for some reason you just can't grow, right? For some reason, I've said this many times, but then when you see that scale, it feels impossible to grow, because it's hard to acknowledge that growth when you see something that's a billion times bigger than you are. I think that's just something that I have to accept that's not true. Because like it's very true that I'm very, like, with my skills and my knowledge, I'm a very, very small piece. And it's not even, I don't think, oh, that's a lie. And there is not that much I can contribute, even though I can contribute a lot. There's not a significant amount that I can at my current stage. I think that's just a matter of saying, okay, this is true, but it's also true that every day I learn something new, I have a new conversation, I learn new stuff, right? From someone who has no interest in AI or research or something like that. If they were to watch a video like mine, I'm talking about low rank adaptation or retrieval augmented generation, they will see my crazy concepts, right? And to me, they once did, right? But then through persistence, through daily effort, through weekly efforts, through monthly efforts, and sustaining that effort, those now become terms I'm familiar with and comfortable with. And just like how there's many unfamiliar terms, like I met in the coffee chat today, and in future conversations or past conversations, those terms, as long as I continue that effort, continue who I am, continue my faith, those things become familiar and it becomes stuff I'm one day teach, and that's the idea. I know it's a very recurring lesson, I think, but I think it's a good lesson to always appreciate once you accept it again and again. But yeah, that's pretty much where I am. There's also a lot of stress because there's always the computer science admission stuff. So that's coming up. That's opening up in October, I believe. So that's going to be a big one, because the issue with that one is that it's a very competitive program. And then there's not a lot of opportunity to actually do stuff from September to October. So I have to basically do everything I did at Pitt times 10 in the span of a couple of weeks. And I think that's an issue, because there's one thing to get roles, but it's another thing to have impact in those roles. And important impact, or big impact, or I guess important impact is probably the preferred word here, takes time to sustain. Like with Sutherland, the presidency there, I wouldn't say there was one event that did have a strong impact. I think it was a sustained effort of having these events that built a community, or doing these small things over and over again. So maybe if I can do that through like days, maybe that could replicate that in some form. But yeah, that's where I am. And there's also some quizzes that I'm trying to run away from, but I have to confront. So stuff are going on. It is a bit stressful, but it's not as bad as senior year of high school, so at least I have that. Besides that though, I have nothing else to say. So, sorry, I messed up. Besides that though, I have nothing else to say. So, have a great day.